So you've heard of recycling, I know. But in this video, I'm going to teach you about maybe some of the things about recycling you didn't know. Now, while this is focused in Montgomery County, Maryland, a lot of the things I'm going to share in this video are actually going to apply to like a lot of places. So I'll try to be specific where that's maybe county specific, but more than likely a lot of this will apply to you as well. Now, before I start talking about the typical paper and plastic and metals, I want to talk about something that maybe you're not recycling yet, and that's plastic films. So plastic films are plastics that are really thin. So think about a plastic bag. And not only are they thin, but they're also stretchy. And it doesn't matter what number is on them, if there even is a number on them. If they are lightweight enough that they're kind of really thin and they're flimsy and they're stretchy, it's considered a plastic film. So some examples include grocery bags. That's probably the most famous or common example. But even plastic that's around toilet paper, water bottles, newspapers, Ziploc bags, produce bags, bread bags. There's a plethora of examples of things that are plastic films. This does not, no matter where you live, does not go in your at-home recycling. If you put this in your at-home recycling, it will just end up in the trash. Hopefully, what doesn't happen is it makes it to the recycling center, and then because of how flimsy they are, they're getting stuck in the recycling machinery and whatnot. So do not put these in your at-home recycling. Instead, you can do what I do. I take one of my grocery bags and all the plastic films I get, you don't need to sort them or anything. All my plastic films go in this plastic bag. When it's done, I seal it up and then I take it with me to the grocery store. Most, maybe even all the ones I've been to, all grocery stores are going to have a bin typically near the entrance of the store for plastic films, or it might just say plastic bags. And you might be thinking, yeah, but do they actually do anything with them? And yes, they do. It's probably one of the most successful recycling programs that we actually have in the United States when it comes to plastic, is plastic films. And that's because grocery stores get paid to collect plastic films because they sell it to a company called Trex. And maybe you've heard of Trex. So Trex is US based. It is in Northern Virginia. And what they do is they collect plastic films from grocery stores and other drop-off points. They also collect sawdust. So sawdust is a byproduct really from the lumber making industry. So they buy essentially these two waste products and they make them into these kind of famous, if you have a deck, whether it's Trex or not, you know about Trex. Trex is the highest quality deck and the most expensive deck you can get. They make these deck boards that are a plastic wood conglomerate. And so what's cool about this is you're taking two waste products to create something new and you create something that lasts. Trex boards are really high quality boards and they're using two waste products. It is this is what recycling needs to look like around the world, is taking our waste and making an even better product. So if you are not recycling your plastic films, start doing that now. You can be part of one of the greatest recycling success stories, honestly, ever. Okay, I shouldn't say that. Metal is actually a really good one too. But outside of metal, if we're talking about plastic, oh my God, this is the best plastic recycling that's ever existed and maybe will ever exist. So start collecting those plastic films now. Don't put them in your home recycling. Collect them in its own bag. Start taking it with you to the grocery store. Okay, now we can talk about maybe your traditional recycling that you might be thinking of. Before we talk about the materials you can and can't do, there's different systems depending on where you live. Even here in Montgomery County, depending on exactly where you live, you might either have a single stream recycling or dual stream recycling. And if you're in different parts of the world, you might have multi-stream recycling, so more than two. Single stream recycling means any kind of recyclable is all going into the same recycling bin. So here you can see in here, we've got plastic, we've got glass, there's metal, there's paper. So single stream is collecting all your recyclables. A really nice benefit of this is that as consumers and as residents, this is the easiest way to recycle. Everything just goes in one bin. You really don't have to think too much about it. A downside, though, is that when you go to recycle things, like you want to turn it back into the original product, it needs to be sorted. And so the consumer ends up spending a lot of money in their taxes to get all of those recyclables actually sorted out. And it can be an inefficient process, especially if you have a lot of things you have to sort. A dual or multi-stream program is going to separate your different types of recyclables depending on what they are. So in this example, it has plastic, metal, glass, and paper. In some areas, even glass is split up. Green glass, clear glass, brown glass, different types of plastics. And that's more common in different European countries. Here in the United States, you either see single stream and more rarely dual stream. Dual stream is typically going to be your papers in one, and then your glass, plastics, and metal in another. Montgomery County as a whole, so if you live in the incorporated cities of Gaithersburg, Tacoma Park, or Rockville, it's going to be different. But if you live outside of those but still in the county, you're going to have dual stream recycling. Your paper products should be going into one bin and everything else in another bin. Now, if you live in an apartment building, it's very possible they're not using county recycling, but paying for like private recycling. Which they're not using county services, so therefore you just follow whatever rules that they tell you. Dual stream is nice because it's a less of a burden on the, not legal system, but like the government system, in the sense that like there's less processing. It's already been pre-sorted. So that's less kind of work that they have to do. But it's more likely to get messed up. We, as like U.S. citizens, are not good at recycling. We recycle things we shouldn't recycle. Things are in conditions that can't be recycled. We're just bad at it. We do not have the culture behind recycling that a lot of countries in Europe do. We just don't. Maybe one day we will, but honestly, I don't really see that happening. So we as U.S. residents really can't be trusted in a dual or multi-stream system. It's going to end up creating a lot of work on the other end anyway, so any benefits you'd get out of a dual stream really isn't helpful. So let's talk about paper recycling. So I'm not going to talk about all the different types of paper, but instead I'm going to talk about the things that you might have been like, well, that's kind of a fringe case. Do I or don't I? So coated cartons, if you've ever gotten, it's like paper carton of milk, but it has like, it feels like this plasticky like residue on it. That actually is recyclable. And if you have dual stream, that is considered a paper recycling product. It doesn't really matter what the liquid was inside of it, just as long as it's a carton, that is considered. Even if it has like a plastic spout, that still goes in our paper recycling. Pizza boxes. How many of you have thrown the entire pizza box into your recycling bin? I'm going to break your heart. That pizza box was probably thrown away once it got to the recycling center. The greasy parts of pizza boxes, and really of any kind of paper, but pizza boxes are kind of the most famous for this. The greasy parts are not recyclable. But if you're like, yeah, but I really want to, you might notice on a lot of pizza boxes along the lid, it's perforated. So more so than just like the spots to open it. You can always take off the lid. I mean, yes, this one has a little bit of a grease spot, but like a vast majority of this is clean. You can recycle just the lid and then throw away the greasy parts. If you want to be real extra, like myself, I will cut off the lid and then I'll take my kitchen scissors and then I feel so ridiculous saying this. I will cut out like all of the greasy parts. And so then I have all that much more paper to recycle. But point is, you can't recycle the residues. That grease, whether it's pizza or whether you had a piece of computer paper and you put your piece of pizza on it, like any kind of greasy, residuey paper, you can't recycle. You can recycle paper beverage cups. Again, kind of like the coated cartons. Even if they feel like they've got a little bit of coating that's like plasticky, that's fine. You can still recycle them in your paper recycling. Or if you have single stream, it can just go in your regular recycling. Some other things you can't recycle that maybe you thought you could. So paper contaminated with chemicals, and that's like super generic because it means like anything. This could be paper towels contaminated with motor oil. You can't do paper towels anyway, but computer paper with motor oil, or you dumped paint on something, or grease, like any kind of chemical. I don't care if that paper was really beautiful otherwise, you can't recycle it. So if you painted something, you can't recycle that art. And I say that now, and now I'm thinking about the other week I recycled something with paint on it. So do as I say, not as I do. Photographs, it really aren't paper. Like, that material is not really a paper mixture, at least a paper mixture that can be recycled. And then finally, things like paper towels, napkins, tissues, it doesn't matter if it's unused. Like, even if maybe it got wet and so you wanted to recycle it, this doesn't really matter. But the strands that make up paper towels and napkins and whatnot are so short, it actually can't be reused. But those things can be composted. So if you have a composting system, like, you can put those in compost, but they can't be in your paper recycling, even if they're brand new and clean. And then let's talk about commingled. So commingled is referring to glass, metal, and plastic. So commingling all those materials. All those three things I just said are recyclable, except with plastics, number 6 plastics. So something you'll see on plastics, nearly all of them, is this triangle. It's typically at the bottom, but sometimes it can be on the label on the side. And it's going to have a number 1 through 7 in it. In Montgomery County, all of these are recyclable except number 6s. I do emphasize in Montgomery County because other areas are going to have other restrictions. The most common restriction I see in other areas is that you can only do numbers 1 and 2. So again, that's going to be really dependent. I will say nearly everywhere, though, will not take number 6. Number 6 is actually pretty flammable. That's not something you want around a lot of moving machinery parts that can get really hot. So number 6, pretty ubiquitous across the states, but the actual other numbers might differ depending on where you live. You don't have to clean your recyclables. You can, especially if you live out somewhere where maybe there's not weekly pickups and you don't want it smelling in your house or whatnot. You can empty them and rinse them so that you don't have to worry about smells or pests or anything. But for the actual recycling process, it doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. Let's say you had a whole container of peanut butter. When it comes to recycling center, so this is the Montgomery County Recycling Center, it's going through all sorts of machines and stuff. It's probably going to get busted open. It's probably going to be oozing out, which means it's going to be getting all over this machinery. There are actual people who are working, sorting everything out. So it's going to get gross for them. So if you want to do a solid for the machinery and the people working at the recycling center, you'd empty and rinse things. But if they come across a full thing of peanut butter, they're not like, oh, we're going to throw it away. It'll still get recycled. Some things you can't recycle. So plasticware, so plastic cutlery as well as plastic straws cannot be recycled. That's unfortunately just trash. And then any kind of styrofoam. And styrofoam usually does have the triangle on it, and they're going to say 6. So pretty much all number 6 plastics are styrofoam plastics. That's not 100% true all the time, but for the most part it is. And again, it's because of the flammability of it. If you're curious, not that it really matters, these different numbers are just describing the type of plastic it is. To us as consumers, we just care so that we know if we can recycle it or not. If I am a plastic maker, I would care more about this, but I am not. So I don't actually care that it's a 4. I just know, can I recycle, can I not recycle? So there you have it. Maybe you've learned something new today about things you might have been recycling that you shouldn't have been, or hopefully, maybe you learned about something you can recycle and you're going to start going to. Especially those plastic films. I really cannot emphasize enough, the genius of Trex and those boards and plastic film recycling. So if you're not on that yet, you definitely got to get started.